Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois. Congressman, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, you bet.
So since the shooting, you actually wrote a letter to the ATF asking them to take another look at this issue everyone's learning about, bump stocks. Do you, though, with what we heard from Sunland and what obviously your conversations with your colleagues, do you have confidence that a Republican Congress will move on this?
Yeah, I do. We've got a lot of people coming onto our letter. It's a letter to the ATF saying, look, in 2010, the ATF declared that these bump stocks were technically compliant with the law. And so the question is, take a look again and tell us if they're technically compliant, or at least are they even compliant with the spirit of the law? Is this the right thing to do? Because technology sometimes always outpaces government speed, and people are ingenious. They come up with ways to do it legally to make a gun basically fully automatic. We have to catch up. This is one of the cases. I think it's much faster if we can do this through an ATF ruling, but if they don't rule, obviously I think legislation's to follow.
But it would be, I mean, if legislation would be more permanent, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, it would. But once the ATF makes a ruling basically saying bump stocks, and the thing is, there's a lot of different iterations. When you start putting things in legislation, that's an issue. Is a certain kind of trigger or whatever. ATF is best handled to rule that, but we're not ruling out legislation. We want to start with this letter. And look, as a gun owner myself, and I enjoy shooting for sport, there's a point at which we banned automatic weapons for a reason, and anything designed to get around that doesn't make the people who own them for sport bad people. It just says, as government, we have to catch up to that technology.
Congressman, what if the NRA opposes a move like that? Does that change your mind?
No, and I don't think they will. We'll see what they end up saying. But this is about protecting constituents. This is about saying here's the spirit of the law, and how do we comply with that. But anytime I do anything out here, it's based on what I think is right for my country and my district.
Well, let's see where that goes, Congressman. Really appreciate your thoughts on that. But also on this, you are on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Let me get you on what was pretty amazing. It played out in this show yesterday. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, he held a really surprising press conference, essentially just to make sure everyone knew that he was not going to be leaving his job. But then all the reporting that has been coming out, if a Secretary of State calls the president he works for a moron, should he be Secretary of State, Congressman?
Well, I think that's a decision. I'm not trying to pun on this, but that's really a decision for the administration. The claim is he didn't say that, so I'm not going to sit here and say I believe one side or the other. I think Secretary Tillerson is doing a great job. I think the president and him, from what I understand, have a good relationship, and I think our foreign policy has been very strong lately, and we're pushing back in a lot of areas we need to. So I'll let the palace intrigue kind of play itself out, but I think we have a good Secretary of State, and I think he gets along with the president very well, from what I hear.
Well, let me ask you this. Your colleague in the Senate, Bob Corker, he's the chair of Senate Foreign Relations. He said this about the whole thing just yesterday. Listen here.
I think Secretary Tillerson, Secretary Mattis, and Chief of Staff Kelly are those people that help separate our country from chaos. And I support them very much.
They are what separates us from chaos. And he was asked, and I'll ask you, is President Trump the chaos here then?
See, I didn't catch that from that. I didn't say he was separating them from a chaotic president. He was using those three people basically separate us from world chaos. When you look at North Korea, you look at ISIS, these are the three people that are basically at the helm of protecting America from this chaotic world out there, and frankly, using America as instruments of power to bring order to a chaotic world. So I've seen all that. I don't think he was, and I know the senator well enough to know I don't think he'd ever intentionally say that the president's anything in chaos. I think he was talking about the world.
I hear you, and that's why it was so surprising. And he actually was asked directly if he meant Trump is the chaos. Listen to this part of it, please.
Okay.
When you say that Tillerson, Mattis, and Kelly are separating this country from chaos, do you mean from the president's chaos?
Well, it's just they act in a very, they work very well together to make sure that the policies we put forth around the world are, sound and coherent. There are other people within the administration, in my belief, that don't. Okay, I'm sorry.
So now what do you think?
Oh, I don't know. Again, it's hard for me to get into his mind and what he's thinking, and frankly, I can't justify what he says or doesn't say.
But do you
I'll
agree?
just tell
Give
you
me your
from my
assessment rather.
perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
My perspective is, I think the president's doing a good job. I think he has great people around him on foreign policy that are advising him, and I think he recognizes what he doesn't know, and he leans on those people. In terms of, I think, any administration, you're going to see people fighting and turning their backs on each other. You've seen it everywhere. That'll probably continue in this one to some extent, too. That's just a natural part of government. I'm focused for what I'm doing out here on saying how do we continue to enforce America's leadership around the world using soft and hard power when necessary, and how do we defeat these threats that we face.
Congressman, it's always great to have you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, anytime. Take care.